sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. My name is Virginia Jones, and this podcast is named after my sister, who's a therapist.
Hello, my name is Laura Ryan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. My sister, Virginia Jones, is a member of the oldest profession. Isn't it comedy?
Second oldest. Stand-up comedy, probably the second
oldest. Okay, second oldest profession.
We want to thank our listeners. We are standing strong at 8,500 downloads. That feels very exciting for us.
What?
We are coming up on 40 episodes. So we've been recording this for a year, almost. And whether we're any better at it than we ever were, I don't know.
I'll be waiting for my anniversary gift come October.
Please send any gift cards that you want to buy us to hello@mysistersatherapist.com.
I really meant you, Virginia, sending me an anniversary gift.
Is it like a couple where I get you something and you get me something?
No, you just get me.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, you know what? I'm going to say thank you for setting your expectations with me. And thank you for communicating that.
No problem. I'm great at telling people how I think and feel. How about you?
I'm not as good. Laura, it's your topic this week. What are we talking about?
Well, Virginia, I know that we're always talking about our listeners and how much we care about them. Mm-hmm. Today's podcast episode was inspired by our listener, Kristen.
Thank you, Kristen.
This is what Kristen said. Hello. I love the podcast so much. I look forward to it every week. I'd love to hear an episode discussing imposter syndrome, specifically the idea of how there are very real actors of oppression that do not want certain identities to succeed in the world versus this girl boss, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps mentality. Thank you for all the episodes.
This is an awesome topic and something that I think about a lot. Laura, do you want to start with a definition of imposter syndrome?
Imposter. An imposter is a person who pretends to be someone else in order to deceive others, especially for fraudulent gain. And I want you to know this. This is the thing that I learned most out of this podcast. Imposter has two spellings. Are you aware of that? We have I-M-P-O-S-T-E-R, but the actually correct spelling is with the O, I-M-P-O-S-T-O-R. Apparently, the O is the preferred. That was my biggest shock and awe from this whole episode. I'm just going to read from the Decision Lab, Imposter with an O Syndrome. Each time I write a book, every time I face that yellow pad, the challenge is so great. Each time I think, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out. Do you know who said that?
Stephen King.
I wish she would say that. No, it was Maya Angelou.
Oh my God. This is a great lesson that almost every single famous person you know, most of them have had imposter syndrome, unless they are super B cluster.
It's interesting from where I sit at my job to see these folks who, on the face of it, you're like, this person is a total success. There's a woman who's meeting all the beauty standards and making lots of money, and she still feels like she doesn't fit in. Jenny, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome yourself?
For sure. In stand-up specifically, it happens to me when I have a big gig or a big opportunity, and I think, well, I'm going to fail. And the pep talk that I have developed for myself is, you have been doing this for X amount of years, and now it's 18 years. If there's anybody that's prepared to do this gig, if not you, then who could be more prepared to do it?
That's a good one. And it circles me back to mine, which is, if a boy can do it, why can't I do it?
That's also a great one. That's the real Annie Oakley motto. This imposter syndrome, I think, speaks directly to Kristen's question. I think that the reason I have had a great deal of it in stand-up is because I am a woman in stand-up and nobody wants me here.
Right. You don't belong. So the definition of imposter syndrome is the psychological pattern in which one downplays their achievements and believes that they are secretly a fraud, undeserving of their accolades.
Specifically in the arts, something else that I have read that I find helpful in imposter syndrome, especially for people who are new in an endeavor, they want to be a writer or they want to be a dancer or whatever it is to remind them that every single person was once an amateur. Beethoven had to compose his first piece. And guess what? I bet it sucked. I think that there's an idea in our society that there's people who are born to do something, who are destined to do something. We've talked about this before when we've talked about comedy, that hard work is going to get you a lot further. than some sort of talent. So I think that that is also helpful to remind yourself. Laura, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome?
In fact, I have. When I was first starting out as a hypnotist, I was an imposter. I had no idea what I was doing. Every appointment, I would just hope and pray that no one was going to yell at me. And there was this one lady who did yell at me. She said, I feel like you're reading from a script. You sound so bad. I'm just going to go now.
Oh my God.
I think it was my second appointment. And I probably did sound really bad.
Right. And I'm sure you were hurt by that at the time.
I wasn't hurt. I was like, oh God, please don't tell my boss.
Everybody, when they start anything, they stink.
And looking back, pretty sure she was a cluster B.
Right.
Because we had problems with her, not just with me. That was a recurring issue.
Speaking specifically of work, something that I carry around in my head, and I was just discussing recently, is that men will apply to something when they are 60% qualified. If they look down the list of requirements and they meet 60%, they'll go ahead and throw their hat in. And women are famous for applying when we have 100% of the requirements.
And why do you think that might be?
I think it might be because men are encouraged to take risks and they've been successful before just based on being a man. And women, we still don't belong in the freaking workplace. No one really wants us there. I was talking to a woman, my acquaintance, and she is transitioning. She was talking on imposter syndrome. And for her, it's gender-based. She was talking specifically about how trans women, when they start to transition, become teenagers. They dress like teenagers. Everything's a little bit a shambles. It's something that we have had our whole lives to put together. And you have to figure out how to be the specific woman that you are. And that can take a lifetime.
It sure has. I'm pretty firmly in the dresses like a sailor, won't grow her hair out, and will not, under any condition or circumstance, do contouring.
Laura, in her whole life, has had basically two looks that I'm aware of. One of them is sailor, and one of them is 70s cop. So brown block-heeled boots, jackets. You really accessorize like a man who's about to be in a car chase.
Do you know the first coining of the term imposter syndrome? Are you familiar with that?
I wish you would tell me.
Well, Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Susan Imes first coined the term imposter syndrome when they published The Imposter Phenomena in High Achieving Women, Dynamics and Therapeutic Intervention in 1978.
Wow. So imposter syndrome is specifically the realm of women.
That's who observed it. They were the first people to observe it. We talk about comorbidity. For the listener, comorbidity is the term that describes the presence of one or more conditions co-occurring with another. For example, anxiety is often comorbid with depression. Imposter syndrome is often comorbid with being a BIPOC person or a woman.
Because, as we were saying in the opening, these are people who are not made to feel welcome because we very much have been discouraged from joining public spheres, workplace, performance arts. The danger of it is you will suppress minority voices.
Right. I remember Emily's first grown-up job was with a group called Girl Start, which was designed for young women who are interested in STEM and trying to encourage them to be interested in that field and pursue it academically because we don't have enough. Why don't we have enough? Because we don't encourage young women to pursue it. So Dr. Clance experienced imposter syndrome herself as a graduate student, but she thought that her worries were unique.
Right.
It wasn't until she began teaching at an esteemed liberal arts college she became aware that other students were experiencing feelings of inadequacy and anxiety. And Dr. Imes came up with the term.
Do you know who's been incredibly important in encouraging young women in STEM? Agent Scully in the X-Files.
Oh, that's cool.
A lot of women who have gone into medical, who've gone into research positions, have cited her. And this is why representation is important. People make fun of it. But if you don't see yourself in these roles, you don't consider that you could do it.
Exactly. It doesn't seem like a possibility. So a controversy related to imposter syndrome is something that requires circumspection. Whether or not what you're feeling is really imposter syndrome. In other words, are you feeling like a fraud because of your own sentiments, or is it your environment being exclusionary and intolerant? The earlier suggests about taking a note of your own accomplishments and helping yourself to figure out whether what you're experiencing is truly imposterism of your own creation, or if there's something pervasive throughout the culture that needs to be addressed.
One thing that I have observed in high achieving women is perfectionism. and the fear of being imperfect in any way because the environment is so hostile. What happens when you have to be absolutely perfect all the time, that you have to be over prepared? Hillary Clinton comes to mind. Someone who is incredibly qualified, but also works incredibly hard. But the danger of that is that you will burn out. It will become easier and easier not to do anything because being perfect is so hard.
I'm amazed at how far Hillary has taken it because she has gotten nothing but flack pretty much since she was born.
Every step of the way. She might be the only woman in history who her husband had a very public affair and people blame her for it. He skated through Silicon Bill, poured right off of him, and people are mad at her because of something he did.
As it turns out, being a woman in America is great. There's been some hits to this research because it was women who were graduate students who were white in the 70s. There really hasn't been much to include other groups. There are 11 studies demonstrating that imposter syndrome is common among Black, Asian American, Latinx students.
Mhm.
However, as of 2019, only Iran and South Korea have researched the phenomenon in their own non-white culture. Over 150 women in this research project over a period of 5 years expressed a sense of being a cheat. They worried that they had been admitted to a graduate program by mistake or had fooled their colleagues into believing that they're competent when they're not.
And that's a very interesting idea to me, is specifically your Maya Angelou, like you've been successful in something before, you've done it again and again, and yet next time this isn't going to work. Another comedy story, I was working with John Mulaney over a decade ago at a comedy club. He had been murdering on a very white male privileged set.
So was he like convicted of this crime?
It was a bloodbath every night.
Like the first row or everybody or what?
Everybody in the room was killed. And so, yeah, you don't read about it in the papers, but yeah, he really killed. We'd done shows Thursday and Friday together. And Saturday night, on his way upstage, I said, good luck, don't screw up. And his face froze and his eyes got big. And he was like, oh my gosh, don't say that. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm always worried that I'm just tricking them.
Well, yes, because even though it isn't explored at all, men also experience imposter syndrome.
But it was so interesting to me because he was someone who had been so successful in Saturday Night Live. He was obviously doing very well. I thought if anybody can be confident in themselves, it's this rich Connecticut
Pretty boy.
who's one day going to leave his wife in a very public way, but not him
You're
either.
psychic too? So yeah, a lot of groups are excluded because this was something that white women were interested in making a study about. So many groups excluded from the study, namely women of color, people of different income levels, different genders, and professional backgrounds. Even as we know it today, imposter syndrome puts the blame on individuals without accounting for the historical and cultural contexts that are foundational to how it manifests in both women of color and white women. Imposter syndrome directs our view towards fixing women at work instead of fixing the places where women work.
Imposter syndrome can really be a disservice to you in many ways at work. Not only do you not feel confident in what you have to say, if other people take your ideas or take credit for your ideas, you maybe won't stand up for yourself. It is a self-perpetuating cycle. You're treated as lesser than, you feel lesser than, then you behave lesser than.
Your environment is going to affect the way that you behave. Of course, as two privileged white women who conducted the study, they're not thinking about that because they're only thinking of their own point of view, because that is the beauty of being a privileged white woman. Everything is through your lens.
That's the beauty of any kind of privilege. And that's another reason why diversity is so important. It's incredibly difficult to truly put yourself in the shoes of another human being's life and experience.
Well, luckily, we're just getting rid of all the DEI stuff, so we don't have to worry about it.
Now, is work the only place that you can experience imposter syndrome?
So let me tell you about a time that I experienced imposter syndrome. It wasn't at work, but it was related to work. I was at my first hypnosis conference as a hypnotist. I had been a hypnotist for a couple years, not many, maybe 2 or 3. I felt pretty good about my position, what I was doing and whatnot. And so we had this black tie dinner event and there were awards given out. And I was drinking and enjoying my meal. They called out my name for Hypnotist of the Year. And this was a room full of 100, 200 people.
Oh.
And I won, which was very shocking to me. And I had nothing prepared.
Wait, no one gave you a heads up that you were on the short list?
I didn't even know I had been recommended.
Wow.
So I just went up there and freaked out. I went blank. I don't remember what I said. I remember telling the owner of the franchise, "You're lucky I'm here." I'm great because people kept coming up to me, old people. People had been in this game for a long time, and I felt bad. I hadn't even packed appropriate clothing because I didn't know I was going to be attending this thing, but my boss was really insistent that we go. We had to stop by TJ Maxx for me to find some clothes. So standing up on stage with him, I felt like the biggest fraud. And I was like, there has been a huge mistake. I have no idea what's going on. So I will just have to tell jokes and work it out.
That mind blanking, that's your adrenaline. And the first thing that adrenaline does is wipe your brain clean of any data.
Well, the good news is I continue to speak even if
there's nothing in your brain. Right. That's actually one of Laura's secret talents, is being able to speak when she has nothing that she's thinking.
There's nothing between the ears, but a lot of words are coming out.
No thoughts.
So like me, Charlize Theron and Viola Davis.
There's so many ways that you are like Charlize Theron and
Viola Davis.
And Viola Davis. And I try to tell you all the time.
Also, Sheryl Sandberg, Michelle Obama, Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. All of them have experienced the same thing.
Have you ever felt like an imposter as a parent?
No. I'm very firm in my role as a parent. I did feel like my baby was not mine when he was born because he was way too pretty. Number one, I was on a lot of drugs. So I was, kind of out of it. And I didn't see him appear. There was just a curtain and then
baby.
And then there was a baby. And I was like, is that my baby? And I remember telling my mom, I don't think this is my baby, but I'm taking it because it's more beautiful than any baby that I could ever have.
And he's a very handsome young man. But I remember the first pictures of him that I saw, he looked like an angry potato.
I know, but he was so handsomer.
I think mothers will experience imposter syndrome in parenting. Sometimes it will show up as I'm not good enough or I'm not doing everything right because
I entered the field knowing those things about myself, so it was no big deal.
But there's always going to be some Susie Cream Cheese who is doing everything aggressively correctly. You wind up comparing yourself to.
Well, I have to give my hats off to Donna Ryan because she did actually teach me that you just got to do your best and that's the best you can do. And we didn't have a childhood that looked perfect on any level. So I think the bar was pretty low for me. She wasn't the kind of person who would hand make your Halloween costumes. Or a good friend of mine, her mother, oh my God. Her mother makes me embarrassed to be alive. She has 5 kids and every one of them had handmade costumes and they would do little plays at home. And she made all their meals from scratch and it was just incredible. And that ain't me.
In the Latter-day Saints religion, our mother was surrounded by these Mormon supermoms who were maintaining fresh foods in their 5-year supply of canned and dry goods and making bread from wheat they grew themselves. And
right. Maintaining a size 6 figure and always
beautiful piano.
Always had the best clothes and hair and all that stuff.
Having child after child after child.
Yeah. So our mom gave me a pretty realistic expectation of my parenting. And I think that's always why I felt competent.
You know what? We don't always shout out our mom. We're going to raise a can.
We're both drinking sparkling water. So I'm going to raise my Waterloo Blackberry Lemonade. You're going to raise your Liquid Death.
My Liquid Death to my mom.
Is that just plain flavor? It's not, not pineapple this week?
Liquid Death, if you're listening, I love your product. This product has a chokehold on me like nothing ever has in the canned drinks aisle.
I would say the same for Waterloo. If anyone's out there looking for someone to pimp your Waterloo. Yes, exactly.
She's an Austin local and she can represent from Waterloo on a very local level.
On a local and global level. So the label of imposter syndrome is a heavy load to bear. Imposter brings a tinge of criminal fraudulence to the feeling of simply being unsure or anxious about joining a new team or learning a new skill. Add to that the medical undertone of syndrome, which recalls the, quote, female hysteria, unquote, diagnosis of the 19th century. Although feelings of uncertainty are an expected and normal part of professional life, women who experience them are deemed to suffer from imposter syndrome. Even if women demonstrate strength, ambition, resilience, our daily battles with microaggressions, especially expectations and assumptions formed by stereotypes and racism, often push us down. So, as white men progress, their feelings of doubt usually abate as their work and intelligence are validated over time. They're able to find role models who are like them, and rarely, if ever, do others question their competence, contributions, or leadership styles. Women experience the opposite. Rarely are we invited to a women's career development conference where a session on overcoming imposter syndrome is not on the agenda.
So now we're talking about how even discussing imposter syndrome makes us feel like imposters. Is that productive?
I don't feel like an imposter as I discuss imposter syndrome.
Yeah, aren't you an imposter talking about imposter syndrome? Shouldn't you just shut up?
Imposter syndrome, to me, inherently the problem is that somehow, because of the world that I live in, and because of the fact that people don't think I should be somewhere because of patriarchy, somehow I need to work on that. I need to journal and meditate and do some sort of self-help crap, when in reality, the system that I'm working and living in needs to change.
This has been a through line for all women, and I'm assuming all minorities, is that the solution is you learn how to cope with the BS, not that the BS itself abates. The solution is always you can do better.
You just have to bend and mold yourself to the environment,
shape of the
that
environment
you're in.
like, squeeze into it.
And maybe police officers will not murder you in the street.
I was talking to you about something this week because everything we do and talk about winds up in the podcast eventually. I was talking to you this week about a feeling that I've been having in my relationship, which is I feel like I tricked this person into caring for me. Then my second thought is, well, how can I keep that going? How can I keep...
How much more trickery do I have to incorporate? How many smoke and mirrors can I have in one room?
And you said, well, you're experiencing imposter syndrome in your relationship. And it's true. It's not how I was thinking of it at all. But I think if people have not had success in relationships or don't feel that they deserve relationships or don't feel that they deserve relationships with a certain person, they can experience that. But the backside of it is women have been trained into this idea that we can shape and mold ourselves to match what a person wants. And we cannot or should not.
You always use the phrase tofu girlfriend. You take on the flavor of whoever you're with. And I know for me, I definitely accepted my first boyfriend's influence and maybe a little bit my husband, but I think for the most part, I'm just going to be me all the time. And if you don't like it, you can suck it.
I think that women's magazines, blogs, we're getting all this information about how to trick someone who doesn't love us into loving us. This pair of shoes, if you do this weights workout,
right? If you do this
one kinky trick,
then you'll be his side piece and will be transitioned into the headline act.
Yeah, because unfortunately, when things are not working in a relationship, when you think you love someone and they don't love you back, the answer is to go. And that's the only thing you can control. The answer is not to try to jump through hoops and force someone into loving you. But I think that that's a hard message for women because we've been told the exact opposite our whole lives.
Exactly.
Speaking of being secondary to men in all things, we recently had the 4th of July. And so I celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Caesar salad because I'm not feeling particularly patriotic. And we watched Independence Day, a film that I have never watched. In Independence Day, Jeff Goldblum's wife is punished and their relationship suffers because she has an ambitious job.
Yeah. I mean, the messages are very clear in all forms of media.
And in Die Hard, Bruce Willis's wife is also punished because she has ambition. And like both of these women had to move to pursue their dreams and their husbands, for whatever reason, didn't want to go with them. And they are very terrible people because even sexy, smart Jeff Goldblum, he's mad at his wife for not putting him first. And he was like, I thought you loved me and I thought that would be enough. Why should it be?
Jeff Goldblum, even though he has many pluses, he is still a boomer.
Yeah. He's still in the patriarchy.
So just imagine if those women were BIPOC. For women of color, self-doubt and the feeling that we don't belong in corporate workplaces can be even more pronounced. Not because women of color, a broad and imprecise categorization, have an innate deficiency, but because the intersection of our race and gender often places us in a precarious position at work. Many of us across the world are implicitly, if not explicitly, told that we do not belong in white, male-dominated workplaces. Half of the women of color surveyed by the Working Mothers Media plan to leave their jobs in the next next 2 years, citing feelings of marginalization and disillusionment, which is consistent with our own experiences. Exclusion that exacerbated self-doubt was a key reason for each of our transitions from corporate workplaces to entrepreneurship.
I've worked in many places that had programs to promote from within minorities and women. And I've taken management courses that were designed to give me confidence. But white men will mock these things and say like, oh, special class for special ladies, whatever. But that's the least of it. We need even more than that to really give women, and especially BIPOC women, a voice and confidence to use their voice.
Are you familiar with Bell Hooks?
Why, yes.
Okay. So she has a book called All About Love. And one of the things she talks about, which has been really on my mind, she talks about the fact that the problem with feminism is we're not starting from the right starting point. We're starting from a mostly white women's place of privilege. And so I saw a TikTok, shocker.
Really?
I saw a TikTok where this person had a pyramid and it was the system of patriarchy and where everyone is on it. And what Bell Hooks says is we need to start with Black and brown people and then work back from there. The conversation as a feminist, you're starting as we have this other group much bigger and much more affected, and we need to start addressing their needs before we need to focus on feminism.
I 100% agree that the only feminism that is worth a damn is intersectional feminism. Where I struggle is how can my experience as a privileged white woman help or promote that voice?
I struggle with that too, because I feel like I don't have any business saying anything.
Talking about it.
Because I kind of don't.
So what can someone suffering imposter syndrome do to combat it? What are their steps out of it?
Totally changing society, fixing bias, not women. Imposter syndrome is especially prevalent in biased, toxic cultures that value individualism and overwork. Yet the fix women's imposter syndrome narrative has persisted decade after decade. We see inclusive workplaces as a multivitamin that can ensure that women of color can thrive. Rather than focusing on fixing imposter syndrome, professionals whose identities have been marginalized and discriminated against must experience a cultural shift writ large. Leaders must create a culture for women and people of color that address systemic bias and racism. Only by doing so can we reduce the experiences that culminate in so-called imposter syndrome among employees from marginalized communities, or at the very least, help those employees channel healthy self-doubt into positive motivation, which is best fostered within a supportive work culture.
This is wagging the dog. This is blaming Barbie for eating disorders. This is asking for the whole society to change around you when you cannot do that.
You're asking what the solve is. That's the solve.
Is not the solve to take pride in your achievements, to list out good things you've done, to talk to a therapist, dismantle negative thoughts. Like none of that is helpful. Because to say all of society has to change means that it's not going to stop.
Well, the whole point of everything I've been saying is that imposter syndrome only exists because of the society in which we live. So I don't think dismantling DEI is the answer to the problem, but we're doing that.
I mean, it's caused by the system.
Right.
But the way that we are going to dismantle the system has to start with having the courage to speak out, disrespect.
But it's not individual. That is the biggest beef that I have with imposter syndrome, because it's the idea that each individual person needs to work on herself and figure out why she doesn't believe she belongs, instead of the fact that it's everyone against her. That's reality. She's living in that reality. So I would say start a Black-owned business, get out of the system, do something yourself, be an entrepreneur, try to create systems where you are valued and cared for and where your difference is revered and accepted.
The two women who researched this syndrome, and in a very white woman way, the same articles that you're referring to also have ways to try to get out of it. And I think that even though this is not the ultimate solve, that this is a very causal relationship. You have imposter syndrome because you are operating in a misogynist culture. I still think it's helpful because we're not going to be able to speak our minds and stand up for ourselves without acknowledging and combating imposter syndrome on an individual level. If you do think this would be helpful, here's some things you can do. You have to acknowledge your feelings of self-doubt. You can't plaster over it and say, no, that's not how I feel. But you should look for evidence, look at your recent projects, look at things that you've done, remember positive feedbacks that you've received, try to find evidence. And mostly, I think reframing your thoughts, acknowledging that imposter syndrome is something that you are experiencing. Acknowledge that everyone experiences it. And like you said at the beginning, If a man can do it, why can't I?
So what do I do if I go through this list and I come up with all the reasons why I'm good enough and dang it, people like me. And then I come up with the understanding that, oh, this is just because Dick won't give me a raise because he doesn't think I deserve it. Or, oh, actually, this is because Sarah doesn't like my braids and thinks that I'm too weird and won't promote me. What do I do with that then?
Well, not every individual that's experiencing this is going to be able to start their own business. Some people are going to have to operate in the workplace and to find solutions to very real problems.
But I think for me, the answer is realizing that imposter syndrome isn't real. It's made up by people who want to keep these systems in place.
When you say isn't real, it is real.
It's not a syndrome. It's a reality that I have to live with. It would be like if I said, oh, we're going to circle back to BIPOC folks. These people are experiencing fear of police brutality. It's a phobia that they've developed. No, it isn't.
No, it isn't. It's real. Right. Okay. So what I'm hearing is you are troubled with the term imposter syndrome. What if we reframe it as these are ways that you can combat being marginalized in the office?
Okay. Mass marginalization, not syndrome.
Yeah.
The mass marginalization effect is what I think it should be called, because imposter syndrome implies that I am responsible for the way that I'm feeling, when in reality, it's everything around me pushing down on me that's making me feel that way.
But if we sit around and wait for that to change, it's going to be past the end of my career, past the end of your career.
Of course. And also, if I'm trying to pretend that this is something that can be fixed on an individual basis, I will be left wanting. So, Virginia, what are your final thoughts on imposter syndrome?
Well, my final thoughts is this has been a very interesting conversation because it is one where we have a rift between the two of us, which does not usually happen. I have benefited from addressing my own imposter syndrome and saying to myself, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and people like me. A person who has been run out of politics. I guess not the character.
The character is still living on.
Stuart Smalley still exists.
In my dreams.
Al Franken has had to find other work. But I do think I can affect my position in the workplace by speaking with confidence, by freaking men out. And this is in both of my workplaces. And I think that in this way, I can also elevate and help other women and minorities by setting an example, giving special attention and talking other people up when I can. I've said it before, in comedy, I do not like to work with men. If I can get booked and perform with only women, I'll do it.
Right. So what you're also saying is giving minorities opportunities.
Yes. I think that is the way out. What are your final thoughts on this topic?
Well, I'm surprised that we had such differing opinions because I think you're right. We usually do have pretty much the same down the line opinion about things. But I feel like the point that I'm trying to get across is that no, I don't think that we can overcome marginalization and sexism and poor treatment of people in these communities. But I do think if I'm addressing the problem by assuming it's my problem to fix, I'm never going to come up with any kind of solution. And instead, if I wake up in the morning and go, okay, that thing happened because there's an oppressive system that I'm living in and I'm going to figure out how to make the most of it, rather than going, oh, why am I feeling less than, then I'm probably going to be better equipped to deal with life.
I hear what you're saying. I just feel a good way to be miserable in life is to look for things, hope for changes that you can't control. If you wake up every day and say, I've just got to win the lottery and make $1 million and then I'll be happy. Or I've just got to get on late night television and become famous and then I'll be happy. I can't control that stuff. What I can control is me and my work and my attitude. And so I have to do those things.
Right. So I guess here's an analogy I'm coming up with on the fly. So let's say I live in a house and for whatever reason, the garbage collectors decide that they're not going to collect trash from my house. And in fact, they're just going to throw trash on my doorstep every day. Mm-hmm. If I woke up every morning and thought, oh gosh, what am I doing wrong to make this happen? It's not going to come up with a solution. I need to contact the authorities. I need to figure out what's going on in the system and fix the problem with everyone else. I still, of course, need to sweep the garbage off of my doorstep every day. I still need to clean up my area, but I need to know that it's a systemic issue and it's not a me problem.
Yeah, I agree with both of those things. I've lost jobs because of men and and pick me women, minimizing me, marginalizing me, and trying to tell me what to do. I think speaking out directly about it and trying to overcome it on an individual basis, that's got to be part of the solve.
Well, for me, the solve was starting my own business because I think about every waitressing job I was fired from. It was always because of this. It was always because men thought I was too big for my britches and they wanted to take me down a peg. And so that's why I lost most jobs.
I'm just saying that not everyone is going to be able to find the solution of developing expertise, getting multiple degrees, and starting their own business.
Of course. And also, I feel like, look at your corner. What have you done? You have started working exclusively with women. That's how you've helped yourself in comedy. And I think we can all do that professionally too.
This is the part of the podcast where sometimes you read a listener review or a nice note. We have been starting to get notes through the Apple Podcast app where people can text us directly. And that's pretty cool. Do you have one to share this week?
I do. In fact, we got another message from Julie in South Carolina.
Julie, we're making you famous, we hope.
I hope your drive is better as you listen to us read your message. Hi again, gals, from Julie in South Carolina. Another entertaining and educational episode you served up today. I was so excited as I drove home and heard y'all read the text I sent on the episode. I love y'all and will continue to support and listen. Keep kicking ass and spreading truth and knowledge. Love, Julie.
Thank you so much, Julie.
I love the use of the word y'all. You don't hear that enough in this culture.
And that's how you know you're dealing with someone from South Carolina. We are going to raise in my case, diet cheerwine to you, Julie. So Laura, where can people find you on the internet if they should wish to do so?
Virginia, you can find me if you're looking at lauraryan.org. You can also find me on mysistersatherapist.com. You can find me on my TikTok. I am Laura Ryan. Or you can watch the show on our Instagram account, My Sisters a Therapist. Virginia, how can people reach out to you?
If people want to reach out to me, they can reach out to me on my TikTok account, which is @Bidinia. That's also my website, bidinia.com. And I wish they would.
And if you want to reach out to the show, you can by sending a text. You can also email us at hello@mysistersatherapist.com. If you want to do a talk on imposter syndrome at your women's conference, count us in. You can go to our email address, hire us at mysistersatherapist.com. We are also happy and willing to be at your wellness event, your women's conference, your mental health conference, your corporate retreat, your dog show,
your Chuck E. Cheese opening,
your Chuck E. Cheese opening, and
your DSW shoe warehouse.
Oh my gosh,
sale.
I would love to host that. I'm going to put my hat in the ring for that one.
Liquid Death and Waterloo Waters, reach out. Finally, in the immortal words of Billy Ray Valentine, who I'm sure experienced imposter syndrome at some time in his life, we can make it, baby.
Me and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.